It's like honestly the biggest reaction I've had from any anime in a while. Just going, what, and like all the way up, and like I watched that scene and I was jazzed. I'm like, that was so good. I hate it, but that was so good.
Hello and welcome to Add It to the List, the show where we binge watch a season of an anime and then talk about whether it should go on your watch list. I'm Forrest, and with me, as always, is Jack right here.
Hello.
Beware spoilers for the first season of this week's anime, which is Odd Taxi. Jack, what did you know about Odd Taxi before this?
So going into it, I feel like when this show was coming out, I was like on Facebook checking and like double checking somebody's birthday. And I saw one clip of it, and that clip made me think that this show was like slice of life, like following this guy around as he just helps strangers whilst not caring about their life. And that's not what this show is, but like a 30-second clip of what turns out is like a conversation in episode 2 is all that I'd seen. I was not prepared for what I stepped into. I wasn't blind, like I knew that it was animal people and a taxi, but pretty blind. How about you?
I literally had like only seen the walrus, the main character. I had heard several, or not even heard, but I had seen several people on the internet talk about how good it was. And I was like, oh, I want to watch that at some point. And then I actually did start watching it, but then I stopped because then I was like, oh, we're going to be doing a podcast. So maybe I shouldn't watch it all the way because, you know, we could do a podcast about it. So yeah, I was pretty much like 100% blind. I had no clue what I was getting into, and it was definitely significantly different than I was expecting. So to start off, I figure we can touch on some aspects of the series that like we really enjoyed, and then kind of discuss those. I think the first thing to talk about is like the characters in the show all are like relatively deep, save for a few. They touch on a lot of issues with, well, I guess not issues, but they touch on a lot of mental illness subjects, and how you feel about that is like up to you. But I guess I should also say, I don't know, what would you say would be trigger warnings for this?
I was thinking about that, and honestly, I don't know if there's any like triggering events outside of like some brief violence against women. It's weird because the show doesn't go out of its way to like, you know how in horror games it's always like, oh no, they're a murderer because they're depressed, and they're depressed because their great-great-grandfather is a ghost. Right, it's always like really trivializing and really sensationalizing. This show isn't like that extent, but it does bring up mental illness as a plot device in a way that's not great for a couple of the characters. And yeah, it's interesting because it definitely doesn't come out of a place of sensationalization. It's just sort of like a weird jumping off point to provide motivation for characters, I feel. And it's done in a way that's sort of like, it's a little trivializing of the mental illness itself, but it's also just like not good character development, because there are parts where it's just like, we're going to lump this under mentally ill, and that's why this is happening. Yeah, it feels disingenuous at parts because of it, but
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do find it interesting the way that they deal with mental illness, because I feel like a lot of the situations in this show are kind of showing you how characters cope with mental illness in, like, honestly kind of like, I guess I shouldn't say realistic manner, but like a way that makes sense. Like, people who aren't like super well off in the system, and they have these issues that they have to deal with, and then ultimately that can end badly for them. I feel like that's kind of the representation that I was getting while watching it. And whether or not you think that's good or bad is definitely up to you. I thought that it was very compelling, but I do think that some of the characters definitely didn't like necessarily develop, because this is more or less a drama, and like I don't feel like characters always develop in a drama. Like, a drama is just like, oh, look at the events that are happening and like how these people are interacting.
Yeah, to be sure. Do you feel like you're going to move on, or do you think I'm going to expand a little bit more on the mental illness thing?
No, I mean, I think we can talk about that like later down the line.
I do want to touch very, very briefly on, it is worth saying, and to the show's credit, or however you want to think about it, it doesn't represent all of its depictions of like mental illness the same, right? Like, some characters, it feels a lot worse represented than others, and it's hard to really go into detail without starting the spoilers super early, but like, yeah,
exactly.
some characters it feels a little bit more natural, and some characters it very much feels sort of like, and boogity boogity boo, here it is, right?
Yeah, I think once we get to talking about like the plot synopsis in particular, we can talk about those situations and how they kind of fell flat. I mean, the next thing I was going to talk about was just like the characters, in general, like as a writing like as just in terms of how they are written. I think that probably, I don't know, the most compelling character to me was probably Otakawa, but he's also the main character because I feel like everything in the show revolves around him.
Oh yeah, like not even like kind of.
Yeah.
Is there a non, like, yeah? There is no other reading. It is his titularly odd taxi.
Yeah, but I really do like that aspect of this show because, you start off with like all of these different characters that are they seem so disconnected from each other, and really the only thing that they have in common is that they've ridden in Otakawa's taxi once. But that's kind of like how the story kind of builds up, but I don't really feel like the story gets going until like, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 episodes in, because I feel like a lot of it is set up early on in this season.
Yeah, like, the show very much is done in a couple of parts, and the first part really is just that sort of like slice of life, like, here, hey, this is a guy and his taxi and the people that he's interacting with. And even in that part there are instances of like something bigger is going on, but we don't like, rubber hits the road, we stop introducing new characters and we address implications towards the second half of the show. Yeah, and it very much does have that tonal shift. Yeah, Otakawa's very nice as a character. I think he's a very well done character, and I think he's a good way of making a main character that is sort of an exposition position, while also keeping him compelling, because he does have a personality. And a lot of media in general, not just anime, but like anime in particular, has a really bad habit of, you have your Narutos who are loud and obnoxious and disruptive to the scenes, or you have your self-inserts who are nothing people who exist to have the world act upon them. And Otakawa's like neither. He's a very cool example of someone who's just living his life. Like, even early on, like, he discusses that he doesn't really have like big ambitions because he's genuinely happy with his life, but that he is a man who wants things, right? And he acts like a very well-positioned foil to like the more energetic, more openly, traditionally passionate people that he interacts with, which is a very fun position to have your OC be, or your main character be in. And I feel like some shows have tried that before, but a lot of times, like, a lot of shows go for it with apathy and making an apathetic main character, and that's not what Arakawa is. Like, he cares, and he's like having conversations with these people, and and he has his own thoughts, and he's sharing them with them. But when it's all said and done, he's like, okay, well, that's your fare,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, yeah, like, he doesn't come across as apathetic at any point, which I think is why he can stay so engaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably my favorite part about him as a character is his, like, nonchalantness. Like, it comes up later in the show, like, what his ultimate deal is, but I find him...
Ultimate deal.
He's pretty relatable because, at least for someone like me who, you know, isn't super socially adept, like, I can talk to people just fine, but, like, I'm not, like, super outgoing. Like I can't just, like, start a conversation off with someone just, like, off the bat. And I feel like Otakawa was kind of that way because most of his interactions start with the person who gets in his taxi talking to him, and he just kind of, like, goes along with whatever they want to talk about. And I find that a pretty relatable aspect of his character.
Yeah, and I think he does it in a very fun way. Like, he isn't trying to people please. He isn't like, oh man, that's super cool, I'm glad that's happening for you. He's just like, oh really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's something. Oh, that's weird. I don't know why you're into that. Like, he's giving very genuine reactions in a way that's, like, keeps his character very true.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of goes into another aspect of the show that I really, really enjoyed, which was just the interconnectedness of everything that was going on. Because, as I said before, like, you start off and you don't really know how everything's going to, like, play out, but, like, it really makes you feel like, oh, there is a small world even in a big city, because they're just, like, in Tokyo, I'm pretty sure. And
Yeah.
you get a good idea of, like, how, you know, obviously everything revolves around the taxi, but, like, how even outside of the taxi, like, all of these events, like, kind of coincide and then ultimately, like, are tied together. How, I mean, even relatively loosely in some situations. But yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts just on that aspect of the show.
In particular, like, I do think it benefits a lot by having the cast is bigger than it could be, but it's also, like, it isn't as large as, like, a big city story normally is, and it's definitely to the show's benefit. I think you did just a good job describing, and I agree with you. Like, no matter where you are, social circles interlap, and this is a very weird intersection of a couple of social circles that are in a very weird position. Yeah. And so, like, yeah, it does sort of have that, like, coincidence. Like, the world is, you know, for as large and as amazing the world is, it can be small sometimes.
Yeah, I think, like, ultimately the only thing that felt just kind of lackluster and not really with that much meaning was there's a group of two comedians who show up throughout the show, and they just kind of, like, are there. I don't know. There's, like, one of them kind of is loosely situated or, like, affiliated with one of the members of this girl group that we'll get into later. But it ultimately just feels fairly disconnected from everything else.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of my least favorite parts. But all in all, I felt like the writing was fairly tight. Like, there wasn't a lot of just, like, excess, like, pointless stuff.
Yeah, everything happened for a purpose. Again, with the exception of those comedians, and maybe there is a layer to them that like neither of us are picking up on. Yeah, there's the curmudgeon older comedian bore man who's like just not popping off, and his comedy duo partner who's a horse man, and he's the young up and comer who ends up popping off and like getting some commercial success. What they like as characters in the plot, they're incredibly missable, but what I will say is they are part of my favorite moment in the show, and it is part of like the first episode. So we like open up on like the intro, and it's very beautiful, and Otacall was driving around with somebody. I forget who is in that first episode, but he is driving around, and we get this very beautiful montage of just like him going about his day, and like the music is coming from the radio. I don't know if that's called diegetic or non-diegetic, but like the soundtrack is coming from the scene in the show, and part of it becomes the comedians like and their radio show, and I think that was a very cool moment. And if their involvement stopped after that point, that would have been awesome. Yeah, whenever they were on camera, it was kind of nice because I'm like, okay, cool. I won't have to pause to write anything down for the next 30 seconds.
Diegetic is what you were thinking of.
Okay.
But
those non-diuretic soundtracks?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that like, God, I lost my train of thought because I was gonna talk about the comedians. Oh, well, I mean, like, one of my favorite moments with them was like literally towards the end of the show, because like they weren't necessarily that important.
I mean, most of the things that I particularly enjoyed were spoilers.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, that's
I
like
will
the whole
say,
that's like the whole point of this. Like,
I will say, I like to go back to Otakawa, the main character. I really like him as, again, as a foil to most of the cast, most notably with his monkey friend Kakihana, who, so they're like in their 40s. They went to high school together. We get confirmed that Otakawa is 45, I think, is what we see. And so Otakawa, he's like nervous about the idea of like dating and like being a middle-aged bachelor. But Kakihana is like not having a good time about it, right? And like that insecurity is very real for him. And like that's like his big like plot relevance to the show is like what happens there. But like in the first couple episodes, he gives like a monologue about like, being our age, we don't have much to offer in the way of like housemaking or like attracting a wife. And it's like, this is a very real pressure that a lot of people across the world face, especially as they reach that age. But I think there's something more to it, like with the context of those characters, right? Because like, and I am by no means an expert, but like the like population situation in Japan is, kind of notoriously not in a good way, right? And so what do you do when you're a poor working middle-aged guy who's at that age where your mother's pressuring you to have a family?
Yeah.
And the answer is go on Tinder and then proceed to lie on Tinder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a very valuable aspect of this show, because it definitely represents a lot of different, societal positions. Like we deal with, a huge like girl group fan, and like how that kind of affects his life. We deal with someone who's really into gacha games and like almost unhealthily so, and how that affects his life. He is unhealthily so. But we'll get into that. I think that that's the most valuable part about the show, in my opinion. Like, you can talk all day about its representations of mental health, but I think that it is a valuable discussion of just like, these different aspects of living in the modern age that, don't necessarily go by the wayside in pop culture or in like common discussions, but like are still very relevant in the mental health of everyone that is alive today.
Yeah, and there are things that are very sensationalized, and they were especially sensationalized within the talk. So, amongst some of those characters, there is a hippopotamus who is obsessed with going viral. And the way that he's represented is sort of whatever. He's sort of a talking point for like the concept of what social media in particular, not any other digitization, not any other like form of like modernization, but specifically like social media and the process of like drawing your validation from likes and retweets. Like he is that touchstone in this show, and I hate him. He's not supposed to be hated. But I feel like the show has points to make about culture TM.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels sort of distracting to the story that we're being told. And like, I think most of the time, honestly, I'm comfortable saying is that when it's trying to raise a point about culture at large, or when it feels like it's raising a point about culture at large, that's when it kind of loses me. Oh, but what I was going to say, sorry. While I was saying that, I felt myself forgetting the point I was going to make. Like, social media and, like, especially when Facebook started becoming, like, the largest, like, the single largest, like, economic factor for a while there, like, circa 2009, 2008. Like, there was, like, the start of studies about, like, yeah, look at all of the terrible things that this is doing to our teens and, like, young adults and their mental health. And that's definitely something that has been talked about in the mental health field, and it's still not wrong, and it's still not something that shouldn't be talked about. It's just, as a field, mental health is, as is all science, if you're not talking about what's sensationalized, you're not getting your research funded. So
yeah, I mean, the only other point that I wanted to bring up before we like talk about if we would add it to the list or not was just honestly visually this anime was pretty incredible,
gorgeous.
Like all of the backgrounds seemed painted, just like imagine like Animal Crossing villagers, but it's a drama.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I really enjoyed the whole just vibe, and the opening was really good, like especially really good.
Yeah, the opening's kind of in a style of its own, which is very much to the opening's credit. I will say, before we talk about anything else visually, this is one of the few intros that I would say you are safe to watch in episode 1. I don't know if I've said it on mic before yet, but anime has a very terrible way of like giving yourself spoilers by how certain characters are represented in the intro. And sometimes you even see entire future fights in the intro. But like this intro does a very good job of introducing the characters so you know who to pay attention to. And once you've seen the show, you kind of get like an idea of their relationships and like what the imagery is. But because it is kind of more abstract and kind of more of that imagery laden representation of the characters, like you get an idea of who everybody is without knowing anything about them and without spoiling the moments for yourself. And all that it does is it gives you a moment when you're towards the end of the show to go, oh, yeah, and it's very good.
It's subtle and like in a really good way. Like even, I mean, I noticed a lot of that stuff when we just rewatched it before we recorded. And
the song's a banger.
Yeah, crap. I like wasn't even paying attention when I was actually watching the episode or the video or the episodes.
Yeah, I think there was a moment where I literally was like, "Oh, and that's her." But yeah, the song itself is also very good. It's very much like a laid back groove. It's very lovely. Yeah, like the characters are done in kind of like a more I say traditional, a more modern what we would come to expect, like digital art, like drawing up of characters. The outlines are very nice. It's sort of indicative of like a relative shift of like just like softer outlines and not like black outlines. Like things are outlined in like the color of the thing, and it's very nice. It's very delicate at times. But then those backgrounds that you were talking about, I honestly kind of got like a colored pencil vibe out of them a lot of times. And I think it was very charming, especially in like the wide shots when like the taxi is also done up in that style and it's moving off of this background that is it's very gorgeous.
Yeah, it is really good. Oh, apparently there's going to be a film based on this series released in April of this. Well, it actually released in April of this year.
I could see that. Is it like a continuation or is it like a
It's called Odd Taxi in the Woods.
Oh, so it's sort of,
it's like a reconstruction. So it's basically just a movie version of the series.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. There's some moments.
And then I guess it depicts some events that take place after the series finale.
Oh, that's cool because we can answer a question that you and I both have, I think.
What were you going to say?
No, go for it.
I was just going to say I don't think I really have any other points to bring up. I mean, it is pretty refreshing to see like a main character that's like not a like young kid, you know?
Yeah, he's a middle-aged man and he can't fight for shit.
Yeah, it's pretty, just all in all, I think the whole show is pretty refreshing. But yeah, do you have any other points before we say whether or not we would add it to the list?
I mean, I guess something that we can talk about without going into spoilers, and this sort of goes back to like what we were talking about, like when the show has points to make about culture TM, is, you know, BLM ACAB 100%. There's a corrupt dog cop, right? And then his non-corrupt brother, and they sort of stand in this very strange position in the plot to like be antagonistic forces in a way that sort of represents like a very strange relationship with what the law is. The show talks a lot about justice and doing good, and I don't know if it's intentionally bringing it up, but it does kind of underscore like, yeah, the idea of legality as a like a moral sense, like that which is legal is what is good, is bull, right? And it's very obvious to see there because, you know, what they're doing and what they're enabling, and, you know, how you can use the law to do not good things, not morally just things that one ought to do. You know, it's definitely a side track, but it's also part of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they're fairly relevant. Their names, is the older brother named just Daimon, and then the little brother is just Little Daimon?
Yeah, they call him Big Daimon and Little Daimon.
I mean, honestly, Little Daimon is probably one of my favorite characters. Like, he has, I felt like, some really quality moments with Otakawa, and just like kind of, you know, him struggling to come to terms like with what's going on.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
He's the non-corrupt brother.
Well, Jack, would you add this to your list?
I would. It's only 13 episodes. They're 23 minute episodes. It's a very charming show. The story that it tells takes off. It's listed as a mystery for a reason. And when it first started kicking in all the mystery elements, I was kind of like, this isn't what I wanted. And then by the end of it, I'm like, all right, that was good. That was fun. Yeah, I would definitely add it to my list. I don't think it does anything particularly spectacularly unique that, like, it's like, oh, you have to see this. Like, this show has defined a genre type thing, right? Like, it's not that. But it is worth watching, and I do think it does a very good job of giving you something that is fun and something that makes sense and is serious while still like having a sense of humor about it. Yeah. Hey, Forrest.
Hello.
Would you add it to your list?
Oh yeah, I definitely think I would. Just kind of without reiterating all of the points that Jack just made, I do think it is really just a quality experience. It's nothing like groundbreaking, but if you like artistic anime, this would definitely be up your alley. If you just enjoy a good drama, like I was not expecting what this was going to be at all. I do feel like it's a little bit of a slow start for me personally. Like I didn't get like super invested in it until like maybe the last half. But if you're if you're into anime, you're probably going to like this show. So, yeah, I would definitely add it to my list.
I would even say if most anime, and if you are this person, you're probably not one to watch or to listen to an anime podcast, but I would say if most anime is not your jam, that this is unique enough that it might get you there, because it is dialogue based. It's not like you're not supposed to be drawn in by a spectacle. Things aren't larger than life. Like, the scale that we're playing on is pretty, like, obtainable, and the plot is pretty sensible, all things being equal. So yeah, even if you're not a fan of anime, I think you may find that this one surprises you.
Yeah. Okay, well now, full-on spoilers.
You said a thing, and I wanted to chime in about it. I just forget what that thing was.
When I was talking about adding it to the list?
Yes.
I talked about just visually, like it's an artistic anime.
Yes. It is an artistic anime, not to be confused with like capital A art in the way that like Fooly Cooly is art. In a way that you're just like, what is this? What is happening? Right. But like there are a lot of things that are done with a lot of love, a lot of care, and are executed very well in an artistic sense. That's what I wanted to say. So do we want to go into like just plot synopsis?
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, like we probably don't have to go super in depth on each episode, but we can kind of just go through a brief rundown of what happens in each episode.
Yeah, so episode 1, we're sort of introduced to like our main cast. We have Otakawa, his high school buddy Kakihana, his doctor gorilla man Goroki, and then his nurse, an alpaca woman by the name of Shirakawa. That's like our main players. Special shout outs to the mongoose MILF, whose name I forgot to write down. She sort of just runs the bar that they hang out at. I love her to death. She's another good example of a character who's like, she's not in the events of the show. She's just like nice to have like a normal person's perspective and like a very grounding presence. Anyway, so we're introduced to them, and we're also introduced to this concept of this wanted criminal by the name of Dabu, who is an orangutan man. Episode 1, Otakawa gives a ride to this hippo man. I want to say episode 1 is Hippo Man. Who did he drive around in episode 1?
Honestly, I don't remember.
I think episode 1 is Hippo Man. Sorry, I just saw one of my notes, and out of context, it means nothing to anybody. I want to say episode 1, he's driving around Hippo Man, and Hippo Man is this college student by the name of Kabasawa. And Kabasawa's is the representation of like social media TM and how it's affecting people, because when he's in the taxi, he basically he asks Otakawa to turn off the radio because the comedians are distracting him, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to go viral because his classmates have gone viral, and that's about it. He sort of soapbox about how like virality is how you get your worth. It's a little heavy-handed, but I kind of like Otakawa just going like, really? That's how things are, huh?
Well, then they take a picture together, right? And doesn't it go viral?
Yeah, he creates like this fake encouraging story that Otakawa told him with a selfie with Otakawa, and in the background is the monkey, is the orangutan criminal Dabu.
Oh, like behind the taxi, right?
Yeah.
Like out the back window. Yeah.
Yeah, and in episode 1, we're introduced to the Daimons. We figure out that there's like the big brother is in on something. We don't know what that is yet, but he's in on something, and the little brother's a little bit slower on the uptake. It's hard to tell if he's just like not that bright or if he is supposed to be a representation of somebody with an intellectual developmental disorder or disability. That was something that I was thinking about, is like whether or not he's like supposed to be one of those representations. He's sort of visually coded that way. He's very droopy looking. He has big, thick glasses in the way that like a lot of characters that represent that do. And he does always just sort of seem to like nod and go along with whatever his brother's telling him for the most part. Like,
well, what kind of dogs are they supposed to be?
I think they're supposed to be Labrador or Dalmatians.
Oh, okay.
I think they're supposed to be Dalmatians in the way that like that's like the like police/fire station dog.
Yeah, I guess I never really like picked up on him being or like having a developmental issue. I just felt like he just kind of trusts his brother so much that he just kind of blindly follows his brother in everything that they do.
Yeah. There's certainly that, but I do think that there's something like and maybe this is something that I became like hyper vigilant to, and maybe I am projecting onto it because of how the show handles mental illness and just that sort of general sphere of conversation, and maybe I am projecting onto the character, but there are like moments in his dialogue where I feel like he's presented to be stupid, at least, or at the very least conversationally dumb. But because the Daimons aren't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, we don't really have enough interaction with him to like figure out what his deal is. Anyway, we have a nice character building moment with the main crew, sans the alpaca, because she's not really important at this point, where they're talking about just like the best rock albums in the way that old men do.
Yeah.
They say Bruce Springsteen a bunch, and after a certain point, the doctor goes, "You're just saying it because you like the sound of Bruce Springsteen." And then Otakawa says Bruce Springsteen a couple more times, back to back.
I remember that. That was pretty fun.
Kakihana's having a hard time getting people to match with him on Totally Not Tinder. And then he changes his salary to be like tenfold what it is. Maybe like the previous one is like less than 20,000 yen a month, or like whatever, like, a low salary is, and then the other one is like 2 million is what he changes it to.
And that whole time I was just like, God, what are you doing, man? What are you getting yourself into?
Yeah.
It was just like so many times watching this show, it's like that secondhand embarrassment where you're just like,
God,
why are you doing
it, dude? Like, pretty much for the first half of the show, whenever Kakihana is on the screen, it's like, bro, stop it. Please stop.
Yeah.
We get introduced to like the main crux of like the mysteries that there's a missing person, a high school student. We then get introduced to the idea that maybe the alpaca nurse is stealing drugs in a way that's kind of irrelevant, but it's very important for the first couple episodes.
Was that in the first episode?
Yeah, that's in the first episode.
Wow, that was really early.
Is Garoki's going like, yeah, some drugs are going missing from my pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. Well, and in the first episode, do we deal with like people kind of inquiring about the dash cam?
At the very end of the first episode,
okay.
Big Daimon, the corrupt Daimon, confiscates the dash cam footage from Otakawa and is pucks it off to Dabu at the very end of the first episode, and it hard confirmed he was like giving Otokawa a hard time and being a little sketchy earlier on, but like at the end it's like, oh, he's on it. He is in on something. I don't know what it is, but he is in it. And then episode 2, we just sort of hard cut to like Otokawa picking up this wolf boy, who is an Idol fan, incel. For lack of a better term, he isn't, to his credit, and the more that we interact with him, he's not an incel, but he's a community whale, I think is what we would call him were he to be in Twitch chat. He was really into this girl group by the name of Mystery Kiss.
Mystery Kissy.
Yeah.
And he's just like so obsessed with them that he like is super excited for this new CD release. And is it the second episode where he learns that he wins the lottery?
No, but at the end, okay. So the entire like drive, he's like telling Otokawa about them. It's like, yeah, I really like them. I really want to support them. I want to see them be successful. I'm going to play the lottery until I make it big so that I can buy a bunch of their CDs. And he's always like, I don't have that much money because I bought this merch and, I don't make that much money, but I'm trying to support them. Can you take me to this place? And Otokawa was like, well, it's going to be this much. And he's like, I only have 2,000. And Otokawa was like, fine. And then when he gets out of the taxi, he's like, hey, are you lucky? And Otokawa goes, I don't know. I think I've used up all my luck. I was in an accident as a kid that should have killed me. So maybe I'm lucky, or maybe that's all the luck I will ever have.
I forgot that he mentions that early.
Yeah. And then the incel wolf, who for the record's name is Amai, I-M-A-I.
Yeah, it's just Amai.
Amai. Whose name is Amai. He's like, well, give me your favorite numbers. And then out of random, Otokawa just like names 6. And that's what he buys his lottery ticket. And then we pick up the Homo Sapiens, which is the comedy group of Boar Man and Horseman. And they just sort of talk for a while about nothing in particular. Like, we sort of established their dynamic of, like, the grumpy, like, you're not taking this serious enough one, and the younger, like, it's whatever, we're not that good. At the very end, Dabu pulls a gun on Otokawa, I want to say. I have a note that just Dabu pulls a gun, and I feel like it's this early. Yeah, and then episode 3, we find out that Amai. We find out that Amai's won the lottery. But this is where, okay, so I watched some of the show on my lunch break at work. And so I don't know if these notes here are episode 3 or if these notes here are episode 3, because I have 2 different things upon which I wrote my notes. What happens in episode 3, Forrest?
I don't remember.
What happens in episode 3, Forrest? Okay, so it's not that, because that's the sentence that doesn't make sense to anybody, and this is episode 10.
I mean, I think episode 3 is like...
I feel like not a lot happens in episode 3.
Episode 3... Oh, God damn it. I looked up episode 3, just no Odd Taxi, and
episode 3.
And Star Wars episode 3 came up.
That's not Star Wars. What the fuck was that? Oh no, that was my one. No.
Kakihana heard Kuroda's phone conversation with Dobu.
Yeah, that means nothing to me. Okay, so I feel like episode 3 kicks... Okay, yeah, I found
That's
it.
So like when everything starts kicking off.
Yeah, episode 3 kicks off where episode 2 left off, which is Otokawa being held up at gunpoint by Dobu. He's basically like, hey, you're going to give me your dash cam footage. And because I guess like the first round didn't give him anything. We talk about dash cam footage a lot. Yeah, he starts threatening his friends. It's like, hey, yeah, if you're not going to play ball, I'm going to go after them. We get a weird date where
Kakihana?
I don't know if it's Kakihana yet. Kakihana has a date in this episode.
Oh, you're
though,
talking
which I
about
really don't like.
Otakawa and Shirakawa?
Yeah. Otakawa and
Shirakawa is the llama nurse girl.
yeah,
Or
she's like
nurse girl.
she's like, hey. So at some point, Otakawa gives her a ride, and she's just like talking to him, and then she asks him if there's anything that like anyone that he likes, and he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, well, is there anybody that you like? And she goes, yeah, here's a picture of him. And she does a thing where she hands him her phone, but it's on camera mode, and so it's a picture of him because he's looking into the camera, and he does an embarrassed because, you know what, Otakawa, I wouldn't know what to do if a pretty woman did that to me. I don't know how I would respond either, sir.
Yeah, I feel like that whole interaction is just very wholesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and so she asks him if she can contact him, and they set up this date / meet up at a park. Man, the early episodes really don't matter.
Yeah, no. I mean, this just is kind of setting up a lot of stuff that's going to come later.
Yeah.
Like Kakihana meeting with Shiho, who's like one of the girls from the band, from the girl group.
Yeah, she's a calico cat.
She thinks that he's making a shit ton of money, and he's definitely not. And the whole time you're just like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, he matches with her on Tinder because he started to lie about his money. Full props to Otakawa here is when Kikihana's like, hey, look who I matched with, isn't she hot? And Otakawa goes, she is 18, dude. What is there for you? You are my age. This is like, what is this? And this is where Kakihana's like, yeah, we aren't eligible bachelors, but like a big part of life is getting married, and like, what are our prospects gonna be, man? Yeah, that happens there. Yeah, not a lot happens in episode 3, I don't think.
Yeah, I would just say it's a lot of setup.
Yeah, it's a lot of relationship building. Episode 4, hard. Okay, so there is a moment in episode 3 that matters. Episode 3, so they set up, Otakawa and Shirakawa set up to meet in a park. And then Dobu does his hold up, where he's like, hey, dash cam footage, all this, mystery. And then when that gets over, Otakawa like breathes and then checks his phone, and he's like, oh no, because he's been getting texts from Shirakawa. And so he does like a comedy, like speed off, like taking a corner very, very dangerously. And we see this cat in this blue hoodie who is almost ran over by Otakawa, and his phone goes flying, and for whatever reason it tightens up on like a gotcha pull of a dodo. And then episode 4 hard cuts to that dude's story. And this is one of those, this subplot has one of those, this show is making a commentary about society moments, where the long and the short of it is that this kid, and to his credit, he's self-aware enough to bring up as he's like giving you his montage monologues, like, yeah, I don't think I really felt joy or motivated the way that other kids did. And so he became like hyper competitive about status and worth by like his school's communities, like eraser trading, and like one of them was a dodo, which became significant because now that he's an adult, he he works for like a mobile phone app company, and he downloaded one of their competitors' games just to see what they're doing. And it's a zoo management game, and the rarest pull is a dodo. And his life goes to shit because he starts wailing and starts becoming like obsessed with this game. Like, he's starting to like, he's stopped functioning at work. He's not talking to anybody else. He's like only playing this game. And it's a very strange like moment of obsession and self-neglect, really, in a lot of terms, and just to a greater or lesser extent, gambling addiction. And then as he's finally pulling the dodo, your boy knocks his phone out of his hand, basically by like driving by too fast. Trigger warning: child abuse. Because in the flashback, this cat gets the shit kicked out of him because he spends 100,000 yen on his dad's credit card to get a fake eBay scam.
Well, he wants
for an eraser.
He wants this eraser that's like supposed to be one of a kind that like no one else at school will have, and this actually like comes back to be a fairly significant plot point, like in the last episode, and I was just like not expecting it in the least bit.
I forgot about it, honestly, because it's not that important. I forgot that it happened until they brought it up in literally the last episode.
Well, like the eraser like fell on the ground, and I was like, oh my god, that's the eraser. Like, it was crazy because like I had also kind of stopped thinking about that, but like the moment it showed up, I remembered what the eraser looked like, so that I was like, oh, that's what that is. Ew.
Leave it in, chat. I don't know. I was telling chat to do that. It's not like they can do it.
Yeah, we're live streaming, guys. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, the cat in this episode is like one of the examples of, I don't like how the cat's depicted, right? Like, it's mental illness for the sake of mental illness being an instigating factor of a plot point. Because now he starts disassociating and gets a gun and starts trying to murder Otakawa for the rest of the series.
Well, doesn't he like also just stumble upon the gun? Like, how does he even find it? Because
I don't think they show us how he finds it,
Well, no,
but
but I thought
Dabu
it was-
loses his gun, and it's Dabu's gun that he has.
I thought Dobu like buried his gun somewhere.
Dobu does bury his gun.
And then I thought that it was he like somehow found it. Like he dug it up and was like, "Oh, there's a gun in here," and then he like just took it.
That has to be what happened,
I'm
because
pretty
Dobu
sure that happened.
does like bury his gun to like not be walking around not America with a gun. Which, to be fair, if you were like me as an American, was like, why is he like? He can just lie and like. It's a gun, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Other countries are sensible about that.
Yeah, he definitely what's his name? Tanaka, right? The cat.
Yes.
Yeah, he just kind of goes off the deep end, and he just wants to murder Otakawa now, and that's like his whole role for the rest of the series.
And like, I don't. As a character, he's like, for as much as the Homo sapiens don't matter, Tanaka didn't have to be in this show. Like, all that he is yet another antagonizing force, but he's the only one that's not connected with the actual mystery. And so I don't get it.
I mean,
which makes it feel like the whole like messaging, like gambling, disassociation, like sociopathy, like message with him feels that much more shoehorned because he doesn't matter to anything that's actually happening.
I would argue that the only reason he is relevant is because he kind of gets mistaken for Dobu, right? Because doesn't the the hippo guy like think that the skull mask is Dobu,
He does.
and then I think
but,
that like people start thinking that Dobu's just walking around like trying to kill people when that's not actually the case.
Right, but there isn't like any like said like payoff to that. Like it's briefly introduced as like background information for like what we're going to talk about Hippo Man arc later. But like nothing comes of that. Like even all of that misinformation and escalation, it's a red herring, but it's a red herring that exists for like half of an episode, and we as the audience know that it's not the truth. So like,
yeah, it is interesting that they like dedicated an entire episode basically to this guy's backstory. I mean, I'm not like necessarily disagreeing with you. Like, I don't think it's 100% necessary, but I wouldn't say it makes the show worse per se. It's just an extra little thing that's added on.
I think Tanaka and the Homo sapiens are like the only two bits where I'm just like, I don't like this show could be tighter if you removed their subplots.
Yeah. But it's all to pay off that final scene at the wharf or whatever, because they all had something fall in the water, Jack.
Yeah, they did. That one is a little bit art TM. Next episode, Otakawa picks up the Idol's manager. I forgot to write down his name, but he just manages the Idol group. At this point, we don't really know anything about him. We sort of get like a little bit of introduction to all of the girls. He picks up he's asked to pick up one of the girls and bring her back to practice, and he's asked to pick up the other girl and bring her back to practice. The other girl being the calico cat that is dating Kakihana.
His name is Yamamoto, by the way.
Yamamoto.
He's the manager of Mystery Kiss.
We get the implication that so the one Mystery Kiss girl, the one who's not the calico cat, the black cat, who at this point I believe we think her to be Mitsuya. She leaves her phone in the cab, and that becomes relevant because Skullmask uses the phone's GPS to track the cab, and there's no real way of him to know that it's in there, but he does, trust me. That's a plot point that just sort of fell flat. Dr. Gorilla talks about closing up his shop, and Otakawa was pretty much like, you're doing it to protect the woman who's stealing drugs from you. And Dr. Gorilla goes like, yeah, but she's not a bad person, so something's going on to make her steal drugs from me. Yeah, and then we see the alpaca talking with Dabu, the orangutan. He comes back and makes another threat on Otakawa to like have him play ball. At this point, the hippo releases a viral video about calling out Dabu. It's like, I'ma bring you to justice, ya darn dirty criminal. Yeah.
And he really tries hard and fails.
I don't know if he tries that hard, but he definitely fails. Yeah, and we see Kakihana taking out loans to afford the dates for the Calico.
God, Kakihana is just a sad case of a person.
I don't think I could have summarized it more succinctly if I tried. Next episode, Wolf Boy comes back. He talks about how he's won 1 billion yen with the lottery ticket whose numbers Otakawa gave him. And he's like, okay, cool. Because you are responsible for this, I'm taking you to the cabaret that I work at. And he's like, I've already set you up. You're good to go. Everything's prepaid. And Otakawa's just like, I don't know, dude. This stuff's not for me. This isn't my life. She's like, just enjoy yourself. And so there's a very solid scene where there's Otakawa and all of these escorts, and they're like, ooh, Mr. VIP. And he's just like, hey, what's up? And they're like, shall we start drinking the champagne? And he's like, I gotta drive tonight, but you guys go crazy. And the girls are like, yes. Yes.
Wait, this was a Otakawa situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I not remember this at all?
So this is the scene where Skull Mask comes into the cabaret trying to shoot Otakawa. This is before that. Which is to say, Skull Mask then comes into the scene looking to shoot Otakawa. At the time, Otakawa was in the bathroom, so he's able to sort of like sneak out with the boar man part of the Homo sapiens.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that he also was there and witnessed this first attack.
Yeah, and when he gets back to his car, Otakawa finds that his rear window is broken into.
Yeah, he has to replace his rear window like twice throughout the show.
Yeah, which sucks.
It's a lot of money.
At the end, so after all of that, he gets home, and the alpaca woman is waiting for him at his home, and he's like, how do you know where I live? And she's like, well, I got it from your medical history. And Otakawa doesn't do what I think is the sane thing at this point and go, whoa, hold up. Girl. He doesn't do that. You don't have to adjust my mic. I'm not going to get that loud. I see how hard I peak, but
I was just doing like a millimeter.
And he just and she, in order to get him to talk to her, because he's just like, go away. Like, this isn't good. You've got this weird situation with Dobu. You're using me for an angle. He's using me for an angle at the very least. Like, cut it out. Don't talk to me. She starts screaming, not like I'm in distress, but just like making a scene. She goes, Otakawa's ignoring me. He won't talk to me. And she's just like screaming to his neighbors. And he's like, stop it. I'll talk if you stop it.
Yeah, I don't know. I love Shirakawa. She's definitely one of my favorite characters.
And this is where we kind of get like the whole vibe. So she and Dobu used to date. At this point, she owes him money. They don't really say why. And he's sort of using her debt as a way to like get her. So she's stealing the drugs to make the payments to Dobu. And he's sort of using that cash to like leverage her in this situation. The horseman interviews the boarman about being there at the night of the shooting. They go through their mail, which is mostly hate mail because they're not particularly funny. But normally they have mail from a high school student who writes in to heckle them. And he gets really sad about it. The monkey friend, Kakihana, goes out gambling. The mongoose MILF is worried about him. The boar man gets approached by that teenage fan who's a giraffe boy, who's basically just like, hey, I agree. The horseman ain't shit. He's sensationalized with this new, like, late night comedy, Jimmy Fallon form of comedy. This isn't comedy. And, like, it's honestly set up where, like, that student's really creepy. Like, his eyes are like real, I'ma get you, I'ma wear your skin type of eyes. And he doesn't exist. He doesn't matter. Of course he doesn't, because he's related to the Homo sapiens, and the Homo sapiens don't matter. But it is a very weird, just like jarring bit of like introducing drama to a dead side plot. The horse at this point is starting to like pop off a little bit. He's starting to get gigs and recordings. We find out that he is dating, maybe, but at the very least, very good friends with the center of Mystery Kiss, like the lead, like, not bulldog.
Just like the center girl.
Yeah, the poodle.
Yeah.
The poodle's the word. I was trying to like, no,
I guess
not a bulldog.
You could call her like the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about it in a later episode, but like she kind of became friends with him because she was like so obsessed with winning, and he was like all right with just kind of being himself, and she kind of found that interesting, and then they kind of just became good friends.
What was the next episode?
Episode 7, right? I think is what we're on.
7 or 8.
I think we're on episode 7, and that's like. That's when there's like a shot through his window.
Yeah.
Like Skull Mask like actually found out where he lives because there was like a tracker in his taxi, and so there was like a bullet hole in the window into his place.
And the bullet hole goes all the way into his closet, which matters because at this point we still have the missing girl case. But he was seen earlier talking to something in his closet, like full sentences, fully like intelligent, like you can run away whenever you want. Because at this point we don't know anything about Otakawa. It's like, did he kidnap the girl? Because people are after his dashboard footage because they know that she took his cab that night, and that was like the last thing that they know. Monkey Boy goes to propose to the Calico. There's a kind of nothing moment where the debt collectors are trying to break down his door beforehand, and he's just sort of like hiding it and like waiting it out. And so he's late to meet up with the Calico, and he doesn't go, "Why are we meeting here? This is weird." She has him meet up in like this empty construction site. It's like, homie, she's an 18-year-old. There's no reason she should. Kakihana, I know you're an idiot, but god dang, you're an idiot, dude. And he gets jumped and abducted by the people that she's working with. Turns out the Idol group isn't making enough money on its own. So, for reasons unknown, it is a front for this, like, Yakuza setup. They call it a badger game, and I don't know if that's, like, a well-known thing, but basically she fleeces rich, middle-aged men into getting abducted by these guys, and then they mug the hell out of them.
And this is when she learns that, he's not actually rich.
Yeah.
Which I was so happy that she finally learned that, because I was like, God damn it, when the hell is this just going to stop being something I'm concerned about? Because I just wanted her to know. I was like, please just tell her that you don't actually make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, and I don't remember what episode it is, but like there's a bit where she's like, she like starts getting quiet about it, and she like it's kind of framed as if she feels bad at first, and then she's like, I want to tell him that I'm done. I want to tell him that I don't want to do this anymore. And so at this point, Kakihana has been like tied up in a warehouse, and so the manager's like, if you want out, you got to talk about it with him. And so she goes to like the Yakuza guy, a porcupine by the name of Yano, who raps as he talks, which is not only annoying, but also just makes it very hard to watch the sub because he talks so fast because he's rapping, and the subtitles try their best to keep up with him, but some of the sentences are very long and complicated, and he says them so quick.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things where I can tell that they had a very clear vision for what they wanted to do with this character, and they clearly put a ton of work into like each track, basically, because like each time he shows up, it's basically like a new rap song, and they even have like a whole beat start playing, so it's like in rhythm. I really enjoy the beats in particular, But yeah, it is really hard to follow. Like every time I was reading the subtitles, I was just like, I'm kind of catching what he's saying. But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely an interesting stylistic choice.
Yeah. And so when the Calico shows up, Kakihana's immediately like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Have they hurt you? Are they blackmailing you? What's going on?" And she goes, "Hey, I want out." And then turns out she wasn't concerned about him at all. She's just a B word. She just straight up goes, "Yeah, every moment I had to spend with him was boring as hell. I don't want to do this anymore." And Kakihana is just sitting there going, "Oh no." Because this is like the first time that he's like really like been forced to accept the situation. Like he's been in denial pretty hardcore.
It's a good thing she cut it off with him, though.
Yeah. I'm glad that they didn't bother giving her a redemption. Like, if she had a redemption arc, I would have been very sad. But, like, no, she's just not a good person. She's just not a good person. Yeah, and so Otakawa calls the younger Daimon to his apartment, and he's like, "Hey, here's the situation." And he, like, sort of lets him as, like, "Somebody tried to kill me. I didn't take it to the police because your brother's corrupt." And he's like, "No, he's not." And he's like, "Hey, okay, why did you become a police officer?" And like we get a little bit of like background about Daimon, about little Daimon. He's like to see evil get punished, to uphold justice, those sort of things. Their parents were hit by a taxi driver, which is like the emotional leverage that Big Daimon is using to have little Daimon hate Otakawa without any real reason to hate Otakawa. So then Otakawa just sort of like is like, "Hey, Dobu's blackmailing me. This is what they're trying to do. Here's the plan. I'll give you a chance to catch him." And then little Diamond goes, I don't believe you yet, but let me open up your closet because you are still a suspect in the missing persons investigation." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't care. Go for it." And he doesn't do it because he gets an APB or an APB, an all points bulletin, called out for him. And then once he's gone, Otakawa says to the closet, "Good girl." It's like, oh gosh, gosh.
I mean, it's definitely meant to be misleading. You're meant to be like, "Oh, is Otakawa actually like a creep here?"
Yeah, but even like it's a weird context because they kind of set up in episode 1 that he might have her in his closet, but at the end, but like in episode 1, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to work. You can escape at any time if you want to." And it's like, what's going on, Otakawa?
Well, and is this the episode where Dobu starts to make his plan with Otakawa?
It's a little bit later, I feel like. Maybe, but I feel like it's later. Either way, like at this point, now that the plot is occurring, the events are kind of whatever. Otakawa physically bumps into the porcupine Yano, who is just sort of going off on him. The poodle gets frustrated at being like not very good. Like as an idol group, they have a gig. Finded the Wyong. That's not words. Finding the ring. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Finding the wrong skull mask. Okay, so Dabu and Otakawa at this point, Otakawa's playing ball basically to have Dabu like let the alpaca out of her debt, and to make sure that Dabu doesn't go after his friends. So he's like, "Well, the first thing we need to do is get my gun back." And it's Halloween, so they end up hunting down a wrong person who was wearing the skull mask. And the reason why this guy was wearing the skull mask is once the hippo made the video calling out Dabu, he started getting this like online cult. He literally calls him his followers, and like he talks about being deified and about being their god. And it's really weird. This is one of those, the show has something to say about culture moments where it is kind of like a YouTube streamer sort of idealization to like a legitimate culty extent is like where they're like setting it up to be. And it kind of goes from 0 to 100 really quick with the hippo, and most of it happens off screen, and it's really weird. The hippo gets a video of Dabu beating up the skull mask guy until he admits that he's not the same skull mask. Yeah.
And that's like the end of this episode, because then Otakawa is like, behind you. And he like recognizes that it's what the hippo guy, even though he's like wearing a mask, and like he's like that becomes a kind of a plot point from here on out, that like Otakawa can like determine people just kind of based on their silhouette.
Yeah, he's real good at recognizing people.
Yeah.
Are we on episode 10?
We're on episode 9
Episode
now.
9. Cool. So episode 9 is actually when Kakihana is like confronted. I kind of put that chronologically earlier because like really the timing of it all doesn't matter. Episode 9's when the Calico actually has her like change of heart that you think is like, oh no, she doesn't feel bad, she just doesn't like having to put up with it. We get the doctor trying to figure out why Otakawa can't sleep at night and like why his memory is so good. We get a flashback to how he met Otakawa, and Otakawa basically just like called him out for being kind of pretentious in his cab one day. They're hanging out at the restaurant. The porcupine has Kakihana call his mother in like a really like, hey dude, you might die, you should really give your mom a call. And he has him call his mom and just like basically say hi, hello, goodbye. It's really sad. It's really dark.
It is a sad moment.
Otakawa gets a recording of the plan, like the actual plan that matters. He gets a recording of Dabu saying it, and basically they're going to rob the Porcupine Man, as the Porcupine Man is going to rob the wolf simp who got the 1 billion yen, because he posted about it online, and he basically said, I'm not getting the money until Mystery Kisses single or like album drops so I can buy a bunch of it.
Well, and this is also when there's name drop. Dobu calls the plan Odd Taxi. That was just a really stupid moment to me. I was just like, they really felt the need to name drop the series.
Yeah. It's a very fun moment. I think that actually happens in episode 10.
Oh, maybe.
But again, like once the plot kicks in at like, they kind of do a thing that like all shows do, is like, because all of the plot lines are moving concurrently, some plot lines are really spaced out awkwardly across a few episodes, which is why I accidentally did the thing where I wrapped up the Calico's plot in the last episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have, the only reason why I know is I wrote 10 on this note page, and on it I go, we have a title! Yeah, he calls it Odd Taxi, and Otakawa goes, you're saying that like it's supposed to sound cool. Yeah. And then Wolf Guy gets brought in on things, because at this point basically Otakawa's like, he's calling Little Daimon, he's calling the Wolf Guy, he's bringing it to the attention of Mystery Kiss's manager, and he's like, hey, this is weird. I've got a way to get people out / get people who need to be arrested. Who's here for it? Episode 10, Homo sapiens didn't progress in this like stand-up comedy contest that they've been a part of. We haven't talked about it because they don't matter. The high school giraffe is there again, and he's saying that he wants the boar to like join in. He's like, I want you to dump your horse partner and be comedy partners with me, I can make you funny again. And the boar basically goes, if I, at my age, start a comedy duel with a high schooler, people are going to say I'm weird. And it's like, that's exactly correct. I'm glad you didn't do it. The manager of the idol group tries to get the dash cam footage from Otakawa for the second time. Otakawa tells him and offers him the deal at this time. He's like, hey, this is how we can get you out. And the manager's like, yeah, I'll have to think about it. I'll have to weigh the pros and the cons. Park here. And Otakawa does not find it suspicious that he had him park in the middle of a construction site. And he starts and basically goes, yeah, and the way that I figure it is there's no way that one taxi driver can stop us. And then he starts strangling him with his belt. And Otakawa's looking like he's going to die. But then the alpaca shows up, hurls a rock through the rear windshield. And the wolf, and the manager gets out and he's like, I think I can take like a 22-year-old woman. Like, let's go, dude. And she kicks him in the face.
Yeah, I love her.
Because there is a running joke in the show about her practicing. Oh, gosh. I don't want to.
Capybara, right?
I don't want to pronounce it because I'm sure I'll pronounce it wrong. It is the martial art where basically the combat power comes from momentum, so it's like a constant movement dance thing. Eddie from Tekken fights in this style.
Yeah, I think it's capybara, right?
I don't know. It could be. She does that. During their awkward park date earlier in the show, Otakawa says there's no way that it actually works because she says, yeah, I started doing it to lose weight. And he goes, there's no way anything that you started doing to lose weight is a viable self-defense strategy.
It's capoeira. That's what it's called.
Capoeira.
Capybara is the name of an animal.
Oh, that sounds more correct. Yeah, but she kicks the manager in the face and then sweeps the leg. And for what it's worth, at this point, the manager seems on sides. Not on Otakawa's side, but he seems to legitimately be like, I'll do what's best for Mystery Kiss. Yeah, there's a tapir who we saw earlier at the spa, who's definitely part of the Yakuza. He's just sort of in the spa again, like in the sauna, and Otakawa's talking to him, and at this point they don't really have a pre-established relationship, and he's just like, hey, how are things? How you doing? You holding in there? You taking care of yourself? Everything good?
Dude, the second I saw him, I was like, oh, this guy's the Yakuza boss. Because he had fucking tattoos all over his shoulders.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the big boss. Like, there's no other reason Otakawa would be talking to this person if this isn't the boss who the other two Yakuza characters are trying to get money for.
Yeah.
And that's like the whole point of them like taking the $1 billion from the Mystery Kiss fanboy is like to give it to this guy.
Yeah, and the implication here, so Otakawa was, like, starting in 5th grade, Otakawa raised himself because his parents died, and there was, like, this charitable mystery donation foster that's, like, paid for all of his living expenses ever since. At this point, it's pretty heavily implied that the Yakuza tapir is the person responsible for it. There's some damn good detective work from one of the, like, Yakuza thugs to be like, hey, we figured out where the Mystery Kiss simp moved to because he posted these 3 things on social media, and we backtracked that to figure out where he lives.
I did love that scene because the porcupine guy just started rapping about, like, oh, yeah, you, like, that's kind of creepy how well you figured this out, but also awesome job.
Yeah. It's like, hey, dude, this is super weird that you know how to do this. Just kidding. That was awesome. It's like, no, you had it right the first time, Yano. Yeah, everybody gets brought in on the plan. We get a news report about the black cat's body being found. So the name of the girl in Mystery Kiss, or at least who we think is the girl in Mystery Kiss, we get a report about her body being found. And she is the missing girl as well. She's like the missing persons case that started this all was her. They weren't using her name before because she has famous parents, but her body was found in the lake. And that episode ends with Otakawa going, "Oh, that's not her," because he'd seen both. We figure out what actually happens in the next episode or two, but it ends with Otakawa going, "That's not her," and at this point we still don't know.
That's not the member of the girl group who's dead.
Yeah, when they're doing the story, we don't see the picture at the end of this episode, but they're showing a picture and Otakawa is seeing it and we don't. And he's like, "Oh no, that's not her."
Yeah, well, because at this
point, we still don't know if Otakawa has taken the girl or not. Yeah. And so it's like, how do you know that, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was also kind of supposed to be misleading. I feel like the show on multiple occasions is trying to make you question Otakawa, which I mean is kind of cool, but I mean it's also...
It's very much done in that way where it's this was for people who watched this show week to week as it was airing.
Yeah.
Because in a binge setting, it is less than 30 seconds from when you figure out the truth.
Yeah.
Dropping shit. I think we hard cut to the background about the poodle.
Oh, yeah. About her whole obsession with winning.
Yeah, she has an unhealthy obsession with winning. She couldn't accept losing, and she talks about that as a child and how she was unremarkable in athletics or school, but she's very pretty, that she's going to find a way to win at being pretty. And she does that by auditioning for an idol group. 2 other people get accepted into the idol group. It's the Calico Cat and this black cat. But this is not the black cat that we have seen before, who is part of the idol group. We establish her relationship with the horse comedian. And then the idol producer shows up and is like, "Let's make the black cat the center." And then the poodle's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill her." She talks about how and at that point I had resigned myself to either getting her to back down so that I'm still the center of attention or killing her. So she invites her to this boardroom at midnight, and when she gets there, the black cat is already dead. And she's like, "Oh no." She calls the manager. The manager's like, "All right, did you do it?" And she's like, "No, but I woulda." And he's like, "Okay, fine. We don't have time to unpack that." So how Mystery Kiss got involved with the Yakuza is the manager called up the Porcupine Yano, who apparently had connections to the producer. And we're like, "Hey, disappear this body, maybe?" And the deal that they came to is we'll disappear the body for half of Mystery Kiss's profits forever. And also we get to use the girls how we see fit in criminal activities.
Oh, I kind of missed that. That was the deal that they came to.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the black cat that we had seen before, her character trait is that she likes eating chicken. We get a little bit about her background. She was raised by a very poor single mother, so her motivation was to become famous so that her mom didn't have to worry. The masks were introduced at this point so what they did is they put her in the group and it's like, "You are going to perform under the name of the last girl," so that while we're figuring out and finding where she went, nobody's alarmed. That's a lie that's told, of course, because the manager knows what happened, but that's the story that everybody accepts. The horseman was shown to really just be what kept the poodle girl grounded. But by this point, we cut to like present day, where main character Otakawa and the wolf simp had figured out that she's not the original cat. In this episode, also, we randomly get a. The microphone just jumped at me, dude. It's coming for me, dude. It scared the hell out of me. At this point, we also get like a random scene where Homo sapiens are starting to fight. And there's no real reason for it, but they're starting to fight. Yeah, that's that episode. It's a really weird non sequitur for like, it's pretty much like, hey, do you remember how we had a mystery part going on? Well, we don't know how to do what we're going to do moving forward and also keep the mystery going. So, boom, here's exposition.
Yeah.
It's weird. We get a scene where we watch the hippo fuck a hot rabbit, who's like one of his followers, and she's like, yeah, it's really frustrating. I don't know how to tell all the haters that you're the real deal. They're saying all these terrible things about you. They're saying that you're fucking your female followers. Oh, hang on. I guess that one's true. And then he freaks out. He's like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for your adoration. I didn't ask to be deified. Get out of here, you bitch. And he breaks a lamp, and she goes silent and slaps him. She's like, you can't play those games, dude.
Yeah.
And then there's like him redoubling his efforts to go after I want to say Bodu, but that's not his name. Dobu. Otakawa basically goes, hey, if you want me to be on sides, we have to rescue my friend. So we get a dogfight between Dobu and a polar bear, who is like the enforcer for Yano, the porcupine man. At this point, we've figured out that Yano and Dobu are not friends. They're co-workers, but they're both sort of competing to be the favorite of their boss. There's a very strange aside where Kakihana is like asking like Otakawa like, hey, why are they killing each other back there? And Otakawa just sort of goes, yeah, they use duty and human nature as an excuse for violence. I was like, okay.
He's not wrong.
And so Dobu wins, but he gets the crap kicked out of him. Yeah. And the hippo runs up at this point and is like, I found him. And he like takes a video of himself going, you can all suck my nards. Everybody who ever doubted me, I am your god now. You are all my slaves, is the word he uses. And I have a note here going, hey, hippo, what the fuck?
But I love how his character has like a complete 180 after this point, though, because Dobu just like completely fucks him up. Like, doesn't even actually fuck him up, but like the second that Dobu actually shows that this guy can't do shit against him, he's just like, oh, okay, I give up.
Yeah, Dobu kicks the crap out of him and then makes him record an apology video, post it, and then yucks his phone into the lake. And it's very fun. And then he goes, hey, go home and be a family man. No, what he actually says is, hey, go find somebody whose opinion you value and get over yourself. We get an end scene where the gorilla doctor is going and investigating into Otakawa's life. This is where we find out that his parents are dead.
And we also start to learn that Otakawa's condition might be like synesthesia, like basically like when someone like hears a sound and like associates a color with that. I am not in any way informed as to what this like. Yeah, it's in short, it is where your brain sends signals different places, or your brain associates different senses to different signals that are otherwise non-traditional. So it's the seeing things differently, it's the hearing things differently, it's the seeing things as hearing, that sort of thing are all sort of like branched underneath those. It is weird because they're at no point prior to this did they really establish that Otakawa has a condition beyond, or like honestly even symptoms beyond, Otakawa
remembers strangely specific details, and can't sleep.
Yeah.
That's why he's a night taxi driver, because he can't sleep.
Well, and they kind of try and use it to build up to his backstory, which will come in the final episode, but it's not like the most well developed subject, I guess.
We get the heist time. It kind of goes off like everything's going according to Keikaku. Editor's note: Keikaku means plan. Like the plan goes off the way that they said, or like everything's set up to do. The Homo sapiens are like doing a pretty good like live performance, and then the boar just goes off on the horse on stage for no reason. Yeah, the plan goes off. They like Dobu pulls one over on Yanu. Mask Cat shoots Dabu. So at this point, Adakawa found a GPS tracking device in his car that the black cat who is going around with the skull mask planted there when the phone that he was tracking's battery died. All right. I hope that made sense.
Well, we also forgot to talk about how when they were at the harbor and Dobu was dealing with the hippo guy, Dobu got shot in the leg, and we didn't see who that was.
Yeah, we're told that it was Skull Mask.
Yeah, that's like the insinuation, but we literally don't see who it was. So like in that moment, I was like, oh, that's obviously not that character. Then it was Little Daimon, and like so in this final moment with Skull Mask, like Dobu thinks he's got it all figured out. He's like, oh yeah, I know he's used all 6 of his bullets. He doesn't have any more bullets. And then of course he still has 1 more bullet left. That was a little predictable in my opinion.
Yeah, and so basically what happens in like this confrontation is Dobu gets out because he's like, hey, he doesn't want to shoot me. And basically Skull Mask goes, honestly, I don't feel anything anymore. Like, I'm not even angry. I think at this point, let's start off by having the walrus apologize to me. And so he does. He gets out and he's like, I don't know what I did. From what you're saying that I did, that was very unprofessional of me, and I should never have been speeding in that way. I'm very sorry. He bows an apology. The orangutan eraser falls out of his pocket. That's the very same orangutan eraser that Skull Mask was fleeced on eBay for by this guy called Ditch 11. Which in Japanese apparently is ditch ichi like.
Well, ichi is 1, so it's just like ditch ichi.
Yeah, ditch ichi is very fun to say. It honestly, it sounds like a Venga Boy song.
A what?
A Venga Boy song.
I don't know who the Venga Boys
are. Yeah, you do. Forrest, do you like to party? Do you like to party?
I never did, really.
Is the Venga bus a coming? New York to San Francisco, the interstate free disco.
I mean, I might know.
And still the wheels are turning and traffic lights are burning. So if you like to party, come on now, move your body.
I don't know this song.
I've got something to tell you. I've got news for you. Gonna put some wheels in motion. Get ready, 'cause I'm coming through. Hey now, hear what I say now. Happiness is just around the corner. Hey now, hear what I say now. We'll be there for you.
I still don't know the song.
It's the Six Flags commercial with the dancing old man. They're them.
Okay.
What was my point before that?
Yeah. Ditch Ichi. It sounds like a Venga Boys song. Turns out Ditch Ichi is Dabu. So he's the dude who did the thing when he was a kid.
Oh my god, it all comes full circle.
Oh my god. So yeah, Skull Mask's like, oh, I don't care about Otakawa anymore. I'm gonna shoot your ass. And so he has that one last bullet because the shot from earlier was not him. At this point, the other Yakuza guy and his polar bear thug has subdued Big Daimon because there are two of them and one of him. And they stole his car so like, I don't care to get into the heist, but basically they're in a police car now after having kicked the crap out of Big Daimon. And they're like, oh, here they are. Let's run them down. And Otakawa's like, I'm going to leave you here to bleed out. The authorities will see to you when they see to you. Okay, goodbye. And we get, like, honestly, a pretty cool car chase.
This is, like, the final episode, right?
It's the penultimate episode. It is the end of episode 11 going into episode 12.
You mean 12 into 13?
Whichever one of those are the second to last, and then the last, that is what I mean.
Wait, so the end of the 12th episode ends with the car chase happening?
Yeah.
Like, starting?
So,
is the car chase really happening at the beginning of the final episode? Makes sense.
I think this is the end of the 12th episode. So the car chase happens. Clap. Sorry. I'm sleepy. The car chase starts happening, and Little Daimon is basically like... Little Daimon gets a nice moment here where he's like, hey, bro, we're going to go arrest those guys. And he's like, they're going to arrest me too. And he's like, yeah, of course, because you're a dirty criminal. But you're still my brother. So we get Otakawa being chased by 2 police cars.
And then, like, 6 police cars.
And while this has happened, so episode 12, or episode 13 kicks off, and we get Otakawa's VA reading a memory journal. The subplot with the Dr. Gorilla at this point is that he's been, like, going back to, like, previous medical histories, like, hey, you were treating this guy, what's going on? Turns out so he had memory problems after his accident. And in this sort of like memory montage that's going on while he's being chased, he was bullied for being a fat kid. He liked cars and was socially awkward. He was from an abusive home. And the only times that he really felt happy were when his dad would take him to the zoo so that he could spend time with his mistress who lived near the zoo. So he like got this fondness for animals and this association for animals, and he liked cars, so he would be so he liked the idea of maybe working with cars when he grew up. And we find out that the accident is his mom went crazy, killed his dad, put his dad in the car, and then drove all 3 of them off a cliff. Or, like, into the bay. And when he woke up, seeing the world as animals.
Plot twist.
We're in a human world. Bah! Mental illness. Also, physical disability. So we sort of get like every subplot is sort of wrapping up. The Homo sapiens are having a heart-to-heart.
Like everyone's at the bay.
Yeah, everybody has like sight of the bridge basically. As everybody's story is wrapping up. The Homo sapiens are like making up or maybe breaking up. The idols have gone there of their own accord to do a thing. The daimons are looking on, and like, yeah, everybody that we've known of right now is there, like up to and including Skullmask, who's just sort of like chilling out, going like, I don't know what to do now.
And then Shirakawa and Garuki show up as well, or Goroki.
Yeah. And basically what happens is Yanu drives Otakawa off the bridge. And so we get like an E.T. style silhouette of the taxi silhouetted by the moon, and everybody's like, what is this?
And Bunny is like flying out the back of it.
Yeah, we get some more overview where Otakawa's like like journal voiceovers. Like, I remembered being happy on the day of the accident. It's like, oh God, Otokawa baby. The alpaca swims to the bottom of the bay where we see Otokawa starting to like his cab starting to fill up and he's starting to like drown.
We're not going to talk about how this like brings everyone full circle because everyone had something drop into a body of water or liquid as Otokawa's taxi is just hitting the water.
Would you like to explain that?
I mean, sure. It was just really funny to me because like it kind of like was meant to bring everything full circle, but just like in such a weird way, because it was like literally like as his taxi was hitting the water, all of these onlookers like it was showing the thing that they had hit the water. Like the monkey guy threw his ring into the water. I don't even remember everything, but anyway, the funniest one was that the new black cat, who's part of Mystery Kiss, her thing was literally just a piece of fried chicken dropping into oil. It was so pointless. I was just like, okay, yeah, force that. But then like the comedians were standing there and the boar guy was like, oh my God, I'm being interrupted by a taxi flying off of a bridge. And that was actually a pretty funny moment from them. But that was like the only thing that mattered.
Yeah. The alpaca saves his life as he's drowning at the bottom of the lake. He wakes up in a hospital bed and he sees everybody as people again. And I want to say, I am upset with how conventionally handsome Otokawa is. He's got a jaw that can cut glass. He's got them football playing shoulders. Homie is handsome.
I mean, I feel like I honestly love all of the human designs for each character because, like, since they were all, like, already kind of envisioned as animals, I felt like they all have very, like, defining and memorable features that really translate into them being humans.
Yeah, you see, like, what part of their design is what inspired their animal counterpart.
Yeah, like, Shirakawa, like, I feel like she has a super good, just, like kind of just a normal woman design, but like not like in a good way. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, like Garuki has like facial hair that's reminiscent of like the gorilla face shape, and like Dabu had like orange orangutan-y bits, and they were like a shitty dyed undercut for his human form. Like everybody's like you see like the visual logic, and it's very good.
I think the art style also lends itself to like their human designs working really well.
Well, the human designs are honestly in a different art style.
Yeah,
like the animals are a lot more cutesy, a lot more like not quite like Animal like Crossing Villager, but closer to like that like chibi or rounder, like less directly proportioned side of things. And like these are like just anime people. Like the animation style doesn't change, but like the character like art style changes pretty substantially. The poodle confesses to like hiding the body, and everybody gets like a happy ending bit. Like Kakihana is working 2 jobs to pay off his predatory loans. Garuki gets to keep his clinic open. The alpaca, she's going back to being a nurse. Dabu's in jail. Like, everybody gets their happy ending. And then the alpaca, I can't remember her name. She's on a different piece of paper.
Shirakawa.
They, as an aside, they have like a cute little moment where they're like, yeah, his social anxiety's better now because he's got used to talk to people as their animals. He's still awkward around women, though. That's a very funny moment.
Yeah.
She talks about like, yeah, once you're all healed up, I would love to go to the zoo. And I'm upset that we didn't get to see the zoo date.
Yeah, I know.
I think that would have been very cute, and I would have very much liked that moment.
Yeah.
And so Otokawa goes home, and we see him like talk to the closet, and we're finally going to get a reveal as to what's in the closet. And it's a cat.
But it's just the black cat that's at the beginning of the opening.
Yeah, I actually yeah. He's just a pet cat. And that's where you're just like, yeah, okay, cool. This is all wrapping up. And then we get the twist. And then we get the chubby checker, where we're gonna twist and then we're gonna twist again. Where the second black cat, the one that was brought in to replace the one that got murdered, she's on the phone with her mother, and she's talking about like, yeah, it went better than I thought. Turns out dropping that one girl like got me a position in the show. And it's like, hey, what do you mean dropping? Hang on a second. What do you mean dropping?
Is the implication that her mother knows that
she's telling her mother about the murder she did?
Yeah.
So she strangled the first black cat who made it into Mystery Kiss. Yeah. We get like a flashback to her doing it as a human woman,
and also just with like a completely just content face.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, I honestly would have been happy if they had just never been successful after I murdered her. I would have been fine going to jail after I murdered her. But getting the job was super cool. And then once the poodle confessed to hiding the body, I'm getting even more stardom. I'm being transferred to a larger management company. Things are looking up for me. I just have one more loose end to tie up. I gotta go to the taxi that started all of this. And oh, what a stroke of luck. He's right here. And we see Otakawa waking up in the middle of the day because his sleep problems are cured now for reasons. And so now he's a daytime taxi driver. And she gets into the back of his taxi, and we see, honestly, the first thing that we see of him, where he's, adjusting the rear view to the passenger's like, so, where to? And it pans up to her face, and then she does, this cute anime girl smile at the camera. And she totally, definitely, it ends there. She smiles and cuts. But she totally, definitely murders him.
I hope not. I don't want Otakawa to die.
I don't want him to die either. But that's the implication. I mean, is that she's like, yeah, Ma, I just have one more murder to do. Maybe I'll murder the other girl that's still in the group. And her mom and she goes, no, you're right, Mom. I shouldn't be greedy.
Well, she says, maybe I'll drop her too, and then I'll become just a solo star.
Yeah, and her mom's like, no.
Yeah.
So she's going to try to murder Otakawa.
Maybe you learn about that in the movie. Who knows?
Maybe. M. Night Shyamalan up in this. It was... I don't like... I like that for the comedy moment of oh my God.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, it just felt... I don't know. Obviously it's meant to bring everything full circle, but... I don't know. I just don't like the fact that didn't get wrapped up. I kind of understand why it didn't, but I'm also just why? Just wrap up that part. Have her get arrested. I know that it didn't lead up to that, but I don't know. I was just upset. I was just no, I don't want Otakawa to get hurt.
It was the definition of the latest of third act twists that you could possibly throw into your It's so one of those.
It genuinely does make me curious if they go into it in the movie, but
it's honestly the biggest reaction I've had from any anime in a while. Just going, what, and all the way up, and I watched that scene and I was jazzed. I'm that was so good. I hate it, but that was so good.
Yeah.
That
was a wild ride of a show.
It shit happens. It starts off being real nice and cutesy and fun, and then stuff gets serious, and then stuff gets really serious, and then that happens, and you're what am I watching?
Yeah,
I liked it, and so did you, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did.
So Forrest, I don't use social media because I'm bad at it. But you have things worth looking into.
I make music. I go by the name Boostello. You can find me on YouTube and Bandcamp. I even have a website up and running now.
It's
Yeah.
2 L's.
Yeah, BUSTELLO. I try to post on YouTube pretty much on a weekly basis, new music and all that. I also have another project where I do more dance-oriented stuff called Prism Ship, which is PRISMSHIP. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Goodbye.